Hello again, everyone, and welcome into another edition of Wrestling with Rusty right here on YouTube. What day is it? It is the 18th of April, 2024. I'll put that in the title after I finish this video. Now, before I start getting some hate mail on this topic, let me clean up some things, okay? Number one, during the Bobby Eaton video that I put out a couple of days ago, I made two mistakes. Bobby Eaton did not leave Jim Crockett Promotions. It was Dennis Condrey who left Jim Crockett Promotions for due to paternity allegations years ago, and then Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton wrestled, not Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey after that, because Dennis Condrey left. So if Dennis Condrey left, how can Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton still wrestle? So after Dennis Condrey left, it was Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane. I wanted to correct myself on that. That's number one. Number two correction I want to make is the person that asked me about memories of Bobby Eaton, that was a fan that wrote in for that question, which led me to do the video, was a guy named Michael. I incorrectly called Michael Michelle. Michael is a guy named Michael, not Michelle. So Michael, I told you when I emailed you back that I was going to correct it. If you see this video, I corrected it. Your name is Michael Farrell, not Michelle Farrell. Now, before I get into this video of AEW Wrestling getting warned about Nyla Rose and her transgender stuff, let me say that I am no fan of pro wrestling athletic commissions run by most states in this country. The reason I am no fan of it for two reasons. Number one, to get a license to wrestle in a state, first of all, is ridiculous because pro wrestling is fixed. It's not a real sport. That's number one. And number two, to get that license to wrestle in a state, usually all you have to do is pay about between $50 and $150, depending upon the state. Get your blood pressure checked at the show that night by a doctor. Sign a index card looking license type thing. And they check your heart, I think. And that's about it. So the so-called physical that you have to take before you wrestle in those states with state athletic commissions are not really good physicals in the first place. So number one, you've got state athletic commissions in some of these states that for a fixed show instead of a sporting event, since pro wrestling is not a sporting event. Well, if it's not a sporting event, why is it governed by an athletic commission? Then number two, when you take this so-called physical, it's not really a physical. What it is it's a racket for states to make money off of pro wrestlers, and also give them a hard time. Well, in this case, the Oklahoma State Athletic Commission, known as OSAC, for Oklahoma State Athletic Commission, has warned AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, about having Nyla Rose, Nyla, Nyla Rose, ROSE, to perform in that state. Apparently, there is a rule by the Oklahoma State Athletic Commission, OSAC, that a transgender wrestler, as Nyla Rose is, a transgender woman, meaning she was really born a man at birth and then had sex changed operations many years ago to become a woman, but she was originally born a man. In Oklahoma, apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently, if you are originally born a man, then obviously you can only wrestle a man. In this case, since Nyla Rose changed to a woman, Nyla Rose obviously is in the AEW women's division. but Oklahoma doesn't see her as a woman. So therefore, they have said that if Nyla Rose comes back to Oklahoma, she must wrestle men and not women. And if Tony Khan keeps her in the women's division to wrestle women, then that is a violation, and Tony Khan will face some type of fine. Now, this story was originally broke by a couple of sites, but I heard it from Pro Wrestling Unlimited, and the guy that runs that site is a guy named Tim. And so I don't know what the fine is, or if AEW received a fine this time. I don't believe they did. I believe they only received a warning, and that next time they would receive a fine. But I'm not sure that Tim reported what the fine would be if they had gotten a fine. But it doesn't matter at this point. What matters is your position on number one, athletic commissions for pro wrestling, when pro wrestling is a fixed sport. That's why I don't believe, I'm not trying to take up for Nyla Rose. I'm just saying in general, athletic commissions are stupid for pro wrestling, since pro wrestling is not really an athletic sport. That's number one. And number two, since Nyla Rose was really born a man, I don't think that she should be fighting a woman. And I don't know Nyla Rose personally. I've never met the woman, man, whatever you call transgender people. I'm not up on transgender political correctness. But for this video, we'll call her a woman. I've never met Nyla Rose. I've seen her wrestle on TV. I never knew who she was until I watched AEW. I never watched her on the independent circuit. She never worked for WWE or any other major promotion that I know of. And if she did, that promotion didn't have a television contract. Having said all of that, my knowledge of her, as I just said, first came in AEW several years ago. I'm the type that I believe men should wrestle men and women should wrestle women, but it should also be traditional men and traditional women. I don't think intergender wrestling should happen at all. I do believe in mixed tags. In the 70s and 80s, we had plenty of mixed tags in Jim Crockett Promotions that I grew up on and was a fan of. But mixed tags are different, as in the man wrestles the man when they're in the ring, and then they voluntarily tag out, and the women wrestle the women. So mixed tags follow that man versus man, woman versus woman scenario. But in this case, this is not a mixed tag. This was a transgender woman who was born a man wrestling in the women's division, another woman. So we'll have to see what goes on with this. I know Nyla Rose posted some derogatory statements on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, but according to Tim's report, she used the FUCK word in describing that somebody exposed her. The person that exposed her works on the independent circuit in the Oklahoma, Arkansas area, and exposed that Nyla Rose was transgender, and she was going to find that person and take care of them or give her a piece of her mind or whatever it was she said. But I also don't think that transgender athletes should be allowed to compete in real sports such as track and field or amateur wrestling or anything that is a real sport. I know wrestling, I just said 2 times in this video, wrestling is not a real sport, but I also believe they shouldn't be able to compete in real sports unless the men are going to wrestle the men and the women are going to wrestle the women, or whatever sport it is, like run track. If the men run track against the men, fine. Women versus women, so forth. But if you are a transgender woman, for that one instance, you need to revert back to your own original birth genital assignment. And if you were born a man for that purpose, you should only compete against men. And then the women should compete against the women. The fact that you had surgery and changed your gender reassignment should not be allowed in athletic competitions unless you compete in the category that you were originally born. Like I just said 3 times now, men versus men and women versus women. And the fact that Nyla Rose changed to a woman surgically doesn't change the fact that she was born a man. So in that case, I think she should not be wrestling at all, because I don't like her wrestling. It has nothing to do with her transgenderism. But since she is wrestling and is transgender, but was originally a man and had surgery to become a woman, she should only wrestle men, if that makes sense. Just like years ago, even though China wasn't, Joni Lauer China of WWE was not transgender, she was wrestling men. I didn't agree with that either. But that's another story for another day. But how do you guys feel on this? Email me at rusty.loudermilk@yahoo.com. And Loudermilk is LOUDERMILK, like speak louder and give me milk. Rusty.loudermilk@yahoo.com, or call me at 724-826-0449. No texting, please. Also, you can leave a comment down below in this video. Trying to rhyme there. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. That's going to do it for me, Rusty. I'm out of here. We'll see you next time for another edition of Wrestling with Rusty. And remember my friends that have passed on. Some of them are Abe Jacobs, Don Kernodle, Ivan Koloff, Ole Anderson, and beautiful Bobby Eaton, many others that have passed on. Please remember them. I know most of those have been dead and buried for a long time now, but just because they're buried, I still try to give a shout out to them and their legacy, because I'm old school to the core. I believe in old school pro wrestling, and I know some of you don't understand that. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Please remember to give this video and all the videos a thumbs up. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed. It doesn't cost you a thing at all. What it does is it helps the YouTube algorithm system recommend my videos to more people. And tell your friends to subscribe if they haven't subscribed, and let them know that it doesn't cost them a thing. You'll always get honesty here on Wrestling with Rusty, and I appreciate the comments and support, past, present, and future. All comments are welcome, both negative and positive. I'm Rusty. I'm out of here. We'll see you next time for another edition of Wrestling with Rusty. And until we meet again, my friends, happy wrestling, everybody. And thank you for your past, present, and future support. Take care. Bye-bye for now.